Before you hear another word of this story, stop and imagine this. You are 67 years old. You have eaten nothing but donated bread and canned soup for 8 straight months. Your roof leaks every time it rains. Your fridge died in the middle of July and you never replaced it. And then on Mother's Day, your only son, the millionaire, walks through your door holding a bouquet of yellow roses and says the one sentence that will unravel everything you thought you knew about your family. Mom, my wife still sends you $5,000 every month, right? $5,000 every month for 8 months. $40,000 that you had never seen, never touched, never even heard of. And standing behind him in silk and pearls is the woman who has been stealing it from you one smile at a time. What I did next did not just expose her. It burned her entire world to the ground. And I want you to stay with me until the very last minute, because the final twist, the one that arrives in the pouring rain at 10 o'clock at night, is the reason I am still telling this story today. If you have ever been underestimated by someone in your own family, type the word listening in the comments right now, so I know you are here with me. Hit that like button and subscribe, because what you are about to hear is not just a story. It is a warning. My name is Margaret Hayes, 67 years old, widowed, living alone in a small wooden house on the outskirts of Dallas, Texas. This house used to be full of laughter. It was where my late husband Frank and I raised our only son David. When Frank passed away from a heart attack 10 years ago, I learned to live slowly. I tended the garden. I baked apple pies for the neighbors. I taught Bible classes on Wednesdays at St. Mary's Church down the road. I did not have much, but I had enough. Until old age arrived quietly like a thief in the night, and every year the bills grew heavier while my hands grew weaker. David, the boy I once carried in my arms, is now 38. He is a millionaire. He owns a chain of tech companies. He drives a brand new Tesla. He lives in a mansion in Park Cities where 1 year of property tax equals everything I have earned in my entire lifetime. I was proud of him. Of course I was proud. I raised him with these 2 hands. I believed with every prayer that he would grow into a good man, a kind man, a grateful man. So, when he stepped into my little house that Mother's Day afternoon with the sun spilling across his tired, handsome face, my heart warmed the way only a mother's heart can warm. And then he opened his mouth. Mom, my wife still sends you $5,000 every month, right? I just want to make sure you are comfortable. The air was gone. Just gone. Like someone had opened every window in a hurricane. My heart pounded against my ribs so hard I thought he might hear it. My fingers curled tight into the corner of my old flowered apron. I tried to smile. My lips were dry as August dust. 5,000, I whispered. Son, the church is helping me survive. His eyes widened. The smile slid off his face like water off glass. And that was the exact moment she walked in. Clara, his wife. Pearl-colored silk dress. Silver heels that clicked against my wooden floor like tiny hammers. A cloud of Chanel No. 5 so thick it swallowed the smell of the apple pie I had baked that morning to welcome my son home. She smiled. Oh, she smiled. A smile that could melt a room if it were not so cold. Oh, Mother, she cooed. You must have forgotten. I stop by every month to bring the money. Remember, I looked at her. Calm as still water. If you did bring it, I said quietly, then it must have gotten lost somewhere. The room went silent. I could hear the wall clock ticking. I could hear a car passing on the street outside. I could hear my own heartbeat drumming inside my ears. David looked between us. Between the gray-haired mother in the flower-dusted apron and the glamorous wife in the designer dress. Clara, he said slowly, you have been bringing the money, right? I transfer it to you every month. She tilted her head. That smile never wavered. Of course, darling. I come every week. Maybe Mother just forgot. You know, old age. The memory is not what it used to be. Old age. Those 2 words landed on my heart like a stone dropped into a well. I had heard that phrase too many times since Frank died. From the doctor. From the pharmacist. From the young man at the grocery store who spoke to me like I was 5 years old. But I knew my memory. I remembered every bill I paid, every prayer I whispered, every face at church every Sunday morning, And I knew without a shadow of doubt that this woman had never given me a single penny. Not one. I did not argue, I did not raise my voice. I simply nodded and reached for the empty glasses on the table. Because some battles are not meant to be fought right away. Some battles are meant to be watched, studied, measured. And when the moment is right, struck with the precision of a woman who spent 30 years balancing books. David walked over, placed his warm hand on my shoulder and said, "Mom, it is probably just a misunderstanding. I will check the accounts. I just want you to live comfortably." I smiled faintly, but inside a storm was rising. A quiet, steady storm. I poured him a glass of orange juice. Clara moved gracefully to his side and rested one manicured hand on his shoulder. Possessive, territorial. Her eyes swept over me the way you look at a piece of furniture you are considering throwing out. Then she glanced around the room at the old photo frames on the wall. David at 5 years old, missing a front tooth. David in his high school graduation cap. Frank and me on our wedding day in 1973. She exhaled softly. "You have done such a wonderful job keeping the house clean, Mother, even at your age." I smiled. "Old, yes. But not so old that I forget who walks through my door, Clara." David glanced at me uneasy. "Mom, come on, it is Mother's Day. I just want you to be happy." "So do I said, my eyes never leaving Clara. "But happiness does not come from what people say they have done for you. It comes from what they have actually done." David froze. Clara's smile tightened, then vanished altogether. And in that split second I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Something small, something afraid. She did not know it yet. But that moment was the very first crack in the porcelain mask she had been wearing for 8 long months. After they left, I sat alone at the wooden table for a very long time. The sunlight moved slowly across the floorboards. $5,000 a month, 8 months, $40,000. Do you know what $40,000 could have done for me? It could have fixed the roof that leaked every time it rained. It could have replaced the fridge that died last July. It could have paid for the blood pressure medicine I had been rationing pill by pill. Instead, I had been counting cans of tomato soup from the church pantry. I had been thanking God for every loaf of donated bread. I pressed my hand against my chest, not out of anger, but out of a bone-deep ache that only a betrayed mother can understand. That night, I opened my old notebook, the one where I used to write grocery lists and prayers. But this time I wrote something different. 2 lines. "Find the truth. Do not trust fake tears." I closed the notebook. I took a deep breath, and I whispered into the empty room. "Clara, you have chosen the wrong woman to underestimate." The next morning, I walked 3 blocks to First Texas Community Bank. I sat across from a young teller named Molly and slid my faded blue passbook across the counter. "Please check if there have been any transfers from David Hayes," I said. "He tells me he has been sending $5,000 each month for the past 8 months. Molly typed. Molly frowned. Molly typed again. Then she looked up with the softest, most careful expression. "Mrs. Hayes, I am so sorry. There is nothing. The only activity on your account is $1.35 in interest from February." I nodded. I said thank you. I stood up. I walked outside into the Texas wind. And I stood on that sidewalk for what felt like an hour. Because now I knew. Now I truly knew. It was not a misunderstanding. It was not a bank error. It was theft. Theft with a smile. Theft with a silk dress and expensive perfume. That afternoon I walked to St. Mary's Church. Reverend Cole, a man who had known me for over 20 years, saw me sitting in the last pew after the service. He walked over and rested a hand on my shoulder. "Mrs. Hayes, are you all right? You look tired today." I smiled faintly and hid my trembling hands beneath my Bible. "I am just trying to understand, Father, why my son's letters never arrived." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "The Lord has a way of bringing truth to light, Margaret. Do not lose faith." I nodded, but inside I already knew that faith alone was not going to be enough. Faith would guide me, but action would deliver me. That night, I opened a brown leather notebook. It had been David's gift for my 60th birthday. On the very first page, instead of a prayer, I wrote a vow. "If they are lying, I will make them tell the truth through the law." I pressed the pen so hard I could feel the letters carve into the paper below. Under the lamplight, those words glowed like a promise sworn in blood. And from that night forward, everything changed. Every visit Clara made, I documented. The date, the time, her exact words. Thursday, June 14th. Clara stopped by with a store-bought cake. Said the money has been sent. Maybe the bank is delayed. No envelope. No proof. Saturday, July 12th. Called to say she could not come due to a charity meeting. I heard restaurant music and a man's laughter in the background. Line by line. No anger. No hatred. Just numbers. Just facts. The precision of a woman who had spent a lifetime balancing accounts and knew that numbers never lie. Then came the August visit, the one that gave her away. It was a scorching afternoon. I was watering the lavender when a white Mercedes pulled into my driveway. Clara stepped out radiant as ever, holding a bunch of fresh-cut lavender wrapped in white paper. "I brought you some flowers, Mother," she said sweetly. "Stress is not good for the memory." I set the watering can down. I wiped my hands on my apron. And I looked her straight in the eye. "My memory is just fine, Clara. Fine enough to remember that the last time you brought me money was never." Her face twitched. Just for a heartbeat. Then that bright practiced smile returned. "Oh, Mother. You must be mistaken. I have been sending it. Your bank must be at fault." I smiled and began arranging the lavender in a jar. "Maybe," I said. "But I already asked the bank. They said nothing has come through for 8 months." And in that moment, the sparrows on the fence stopped chirping. The wind stopped moving. Even the cicadas held their breath. Clara fidgeted with the pearl necklace at her throat. "I will double-check," she said quickly. Then she practically ran back to her Mercedes, leaving nothing behind but the sharp scent of expensive perfume. I stood there, watching her taillights disappear down the road, and that was the moment I knew. She was not just lying. She was terrified. And terrified people make mistakes. That evening, I made a phone call from the payphone at the post office because I no longer trusted my own house. I called David's company. I asked for the accounting department. And a woman named Sandra Miller answered. "Yes, Mrs. Hayes," she said carefully. "I can confirm that automated transfers of $5,000 have been going out on the 15th of every month for the past 8 months. The recipient's name matches yours, but the account number—" I hesitated to say this, but the account number is not the one you gave me. It is different. 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 The word rang in my ears the whole walk home. Someone had opened a bank account. Under my name. That was not mine. And I already knew who. That night I could not sleep. I sat at the kitchen table under the yellow lamp, and I stared at Frank's photograph on the wall. "Frank," I whispered, "if someone underestimates you, do not shout. Let them hear the sound of the truth instead." And then, the very next morning, there was a knock at my door. A tall, gray-haired man in a charcoal suit stood on my porch. "Mrs. Margaret Hayes," he said politely. "I am Bennett, chief accountant at your son's company, Hayes and Partners." My heart stopped. I invited him inside. I poured him a glass of water. He opened a leather briefcase on my kitchen table and slid a folder across the wood. One had my SOR, and that folder changed everything. 8 bank transfers, $5,000 each, $40,000 total. Sender David Hayes, recipient Clara Hayes, recipient Clara Hayes. Every single receipt clipped neatly with a blue paper clip. Every date exactly the 15th of the month. Verified, stamped, undeniable. I looked up at him, my voice hoarse. "Who opened that account, Mr. Bennett?" He removed his glasses and wiped them slowly. "Your daughter-in-law, Mrs. Hayes. Every document bears her signature. She used a forged copy of your ID. Very sophisticated forgery. The bank's automated system registered it as your account even though every dollar went to her." I pressed my hand to my forehead. The room tilted. But he was not done. "Mrs. Hayes, there is something else. She has also been using the company credit card. Over $30,000 in personal charges in 3 months. Spa treatments, jewelry, clothing, first-class flights to New York, a down payment on a new Lexus, Cancun for two. I did not speak. I could not speak, because at that exact moment, I remembered something. Something Clara had said to me a month ago while sitting on my porch drinking my iced tea. Mother, David is so busy. I handle everything for him. Everything. She was not lying about that. She really did handle everything. She was not lying about that. She really did handle everything. Every single dollar. Mr. Bennett, I said finally. If I want to expose this, will you help me? He looked at me for a long moment, with steady, gray-blue eyes. Mrs. Hayes, I believe in justice, but I also believe in evidence. We need to prepare carefully, or she will twist the story and turn David against you. Clara is not an easy opponent. I nodded. I know, I said. I have seen her smile while she lies. He gave a faint, grim smile. Then I am with you, Mrs. Hayes. For the next 2 weeks, Bennett and I worked in the shadows like two accountants planning a very quiet war. He pulled every transaction, every receipt, every forged document. My old college friend, Amelia Rowe, now a lawyer specializing in elder financial fraud, reviewed everything. She said the words no mother ever wants to hear about her own family. Margaret, this is a textbook case. We can do criminal or civil. Your call. I paused a long time. Then I said quietly, not yet. I do not want the court to see it before David does. He needs to witness it. With his own eyes. Otherwise, justice will mean nothing. And that is when I set the trap. I invited David and Clara to a Sunday dinner. Honey roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, apple walnut salad, apple pie. All of David's childhood favorites. I polished Frank's old silverware. I lit 2 tall candles. And in the center of the table I placed a plain beige envelope. Innocent, ordinary, and absolutely lethal. When Clara walked in, she looked flawless as always. Pale pink silk dress, new heels, a string of pearls. David hugged me and whispered, Mom, you look great. I smiled. Son, I am better than ever. Thanks to God's grace, and the two of you. We ate, we laughed, we chatted about the weather. And then, right in the middle of the main course, I looked up gently and said, I truly appreciate you both, especially for this month's $5,000. Clara paused for half a heartbeat, then flashed a bright smile. Oh, Mother, please do not be so formal. I'm just doing what I should. I nodded shyly. I'm thrilled. I just bought a new heater with it. Texas gets chilly early. Clara's smile widened. She glanced at David with a look that said, see, everything is fine. And then, very gently, like I was just curious, I asked, oh, Clara, what day do you usually send it? She did not even pause. She answered instantly, like a reflex. The 10th. Every month? Mother. I nodded lightly. But before I could say another word, David spoke up, puzzled. Wait. Not the 10th, honey. I set the auto transfer for the 15th. Silence. The kind of silence that has weight. That has temperature. The kind of silence that fills a room like water fills a sinking ship. I watched Clara's face. I watched every muscle in it try to rearrange itself into something innocent, and fail. She forced a strained laugh. Oh, I thought you said the 10th. David's eyes narrowed. No. I am sure it is the 15th. That is when payroll hits. If you were sitting at that dinner table right now watching a liar walk straight into her own trap, what would you have done? Would you have kept your composure like I did? Or would you have thrown down your fork right then and there? Tell me honestly in the comments, I want to know. Because most of us, if we are being truthful, have lived through a shattered dinner like this at least once in our lives. I set my fork down calmly. Oh, wonderful, I said. I will go to the bank on the 15th to check just to be sure the system is not having issues. Clara laughed, brittle and sharp. Oh, Mother, you are so careful. Do not worry, I have been sending it regularly. But David was not smiling anymore. Something behind his eyes had shifted. A thin new line of doubt. They left just after 9. And 2 days later, I invited them back. This time for a Sunday evening dinner. Beef stew simmering in red wine, warm bread, candles, and that same plain beige envelope in the middle of the table. What Clara did not know was that this time Bennett would be coming too, and so would Reverend Cole. And so would the truth. At exactly 7 o'clock, the car pulled in. Clara stepped out in a jade silk dress and Dior perfume. David followed with white lilies. Around 15 minutes into dinner, Reverend Cole arrived carrying a large white envelope. Clara tilted her head puzzled. "Oh, so this really is a charity dinner. Mother, I thought you were joking." I smiled softly and poured her wine. "Yes," I said. "A dinner to talk about trust, and giving, and honesty." Those 3 words made her stiffen. But she recovered fast. David kept eating, unaware. And then I opened the envelope Reverend Cole had brought. "Son," I said quietly, "this is the list of every donation made to Mother over the past 8 months. I think you should take a look." David frowned. "Donations. Mom, I have been sending you the money every month." I slid the top page toward him. The bold print stopped his breath. Recipient: Clara Hayes. Amount: $5,000. Date: the 15th of every month. His hand shook. Clara jumped in, her voice suddenly high and honeyed. "Oh, that must be some kind of mix-up, Mother. Banks make mistakes with recipient names all the time. Is that so?" I said calmly. "Then how about this spa bill in Houston for $1,200 charged to the secondary card under your name? Was that the bank's mistake too?" Her face stiffened. She forced a laugh. "Oh dear. Maybe someone used my name by accident." And that was the moment. That was the exact moment. When a deep male voice spoke from the doorway. "No, Mrs. Hayes. No one used your name by accident. I am the one who prepared those records." Every head turned. Bennett stood in the doorway holding a thick stack of printed papers. Clara's face went the color of old paper. David turned to him, confused. "Who are you?" "I am Bennett. Mr. Hayes, chief accountant at your firm. And the one your mother authorized to investigate the transfers being made under her name." The temperature in that room dropped 10 degrees. I stood facing Clara. "Bennett can verify every amount, every signature, every transaction. 8 transfers, 5,000 each. Not one of them ever reached me." David turned to his wife, his voice cracking like ice. "Clara, what is this?" She grabbed his hand, tears already spilling. "I just borrowed it, that is all. I was going to pay it back. I did not want to upset your mother." I sighed. 8 months of borrowing. By forging bank papers under your mother-in-law's name. She sobbed harder. But those tears were not guilt. They were panic. David pulled his hand away, his eyes burning. "What did you do to my mother?" "I sent that money so she could live comfortably. You used it for cars, and spas, and vacations, and lied." To my face. Clara stepped back, her face draining of color. "You do not understand. I just enough." David slammed his palm on the table so hard the wine glasses jumped. Reverend Cole folded his hands and said quietly, "Sometimes God does not need to punish the guilty. He just lets them see their own reflection." I looked at Clara, my voice calm. "You know I did not need that money. What I needed was respect, and you took that, not just from me, but from your husband too." She sobbed. "Mother, I am sorry. I just wanted to help David manage things better." I shook my head. "Stop lying. You did not manage. You stole." She stood up, snatched her purse, and stormed out. Her heels struck the wooden floor in a rhythm I will never forget. Each step sounding like the closing chapter of a very long lie. David did not stop her. He just sat there, head bowed, the door slammed shut. And silence fell. The court hearing came 3 weeks later. Case number 23, CF 981. Margaret Hayes plaintiff versus Clara Hayes defendant. Elder financial exploitation and family fraud. The judge ordered her to return the full $40,000, stripped her of access to any of David's accounts for 5 years, and required her to complete a 6-month financial rehabilitation program. The gavel struck 3 times. Dry and cold. Like a steel door closing, Clara turned to David one last time. "You have to believe me. I did not mean to. He did not answer. He just looked at her with the emptiest eyes I have ever seen, and turned away. I did not feel triumph in that moment. I did not feel joy. I felt the quiet ache of a mother who had just watched her son lose his marriage in order to save his soul. The rain came that night, heavy, steady, cold, and months later on, another rainy night at exactly 10 o'clock, a soft, insistent knock came at my door. I opened it, and there stood David, drenched, hair plastered to his forehead, eyes red and hollow. He fell to his knees on my wet floor. "Mom," his voice cracked. "Mom, I am so sorry. I have been so stupid." I knelt down beside him. I placed my hand on his trembling shoulder, and I whispered the words I had been saving for months. "David, get up, son. Everyone stumbles. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is saving yourself." He looked up at me, tears mixing with rain. "I do not deserve your forgiveness, Mom. I doubted you. I let her manipulate me. I stayed silent while you suffered. And now she is gone. She drained our savings, took what was left from the company, and ran off with a man she had known before we were married. She left me one message, Mom, just one. You trusted the wrong person." I did not feel anger. I did not feel surprise. I just felt tired. Tired, and finally at peace. I dried his hair with a towel the same way I used to when he was a little boy after playing in the rain. I brewed him a cup of ginger tea. I sat him by the fireplace. And I said the words I want every single mother watching this to hear right now. "No, son. You just realized the truth too late. But even when trust is broken, it is still what separates us from those who deceive." He rested his head on my shoulder like a child who had finally found his way home. That was 1 year ago. Today, I run the Grace Hayes Foundation out of the basement of St. Mary's Church. We help elderly people who have been financially exploited by their own children and grandchildren. Every week, we hear a new story. An old woman tricked into signing away her home. A 70-year-old man whose grandson drained his pension. An 80-year-old widow whose signature was forged for a loan. And every week, David comes in on Saturday mornings. He brings coffee. He organizes files. He sits with the victims and listens. He is not the millionaire he used to be. He lost the company. He lost the mansion. He lost the Tesla. But he found something worth more than any of it. He found his conscience. And he found his mother again. Last spring, the state of Texas named me Woman of the Year. I stood on a wooden podium in a light blue dress, no glamour, no pretense. And I said this into the microphone. When someone steals your trust, reclaim it with truth. No shouting, no hatred, just truth. Because truth holds a power that no punishment ever could. And from the second row, I saw my son, wiping his eyes, watching me the way he used to watch me when he was 5 years old and thought his mother could do anything in the world. So, if you are still here with me, if you have listened to every word of this story, then I need you to hear this one last thing, because I am not telling you my story so you can feel sorry for me. I am telling you because somewhere out there tonight there is a mother eating soup out of a can while her family drives a brand new car. There is a father rationing his medicine while his son forgets to call. There is a widow sitting alone in a dark house, wondering if she is losing her mind because the people she loves keep telling her she is. And I want that mother, that father, that widow, to know something. You are not crazy. You are not forgetting. You are not too old. You are being lied to. And the moment you find the courage to say enough is the moment your life begins again. I lost $40,000. I lost 8 months of comfort. I lost the daughter-in-law I once tried to love, but I gained something no thief in silk and pearls can ever take from me again. My dignity, my voice, and a son who finally knows what honesty means. Now before you close this video, I have one favor to ask you. If you cried during this story, if you thought of your own mother, your own father, your own Kravnother, sitting alone somewhere tonight, do not scroll away yet. Pick up the phone and call them tonight, not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. Because the greatest theft in this world is not money. It is the time we did not spend with the ones who loved us first. and then come back here and tell me in the comments below. Where are you watching from? What city? What country? What kitchen table? What quiet bedroom at midnight? Every single comment you leave is another candle lit for a mother somewhere in the world who needs to hear that she is not forgotten. Hit that like button so this story reaches the next mother who needs it. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next story, because I have more to tell you. Stories of women, of mothers, of fathers, of grandparents who fell hard and rose again through the quiet, unstoppable light of truth. Share this video with someone in your family who needs to hear it. Even if it is uncomfortable. Especially if it is uncomfortable. My name is Margaret Havel and I'm Teftos and of 68 years old now. I still live in a small wooden house on the outskirts of Dallas, Texas. My lavender still blooms every spring. My apple pies still cool on the kitchen windowsill. And every single night, before I turn out the light, I light one small candle beside the photograph of my husband, and I whisper into the flame, "Frank, we did it. She underestimated the wrong woman." Good night, my friends. Sleep well. And remember, the truth always finds its way home.